Channel 5 Network. This is OpenLine.
To OpenLine, I'm Ben Hall. We are talking about something tonight that is affecting all too many people this year. We're talking about the flu. And tonight we want to separate fact from fiction. And happy to have with us Dr. William Schaffner, infectious disease specialist at Vanderbilt University Medical Center. Thank you for being here.
Good to be here.
We really appreciate you coming on and answering questions. We will be taking questions, as we always do. You can call in. Or we're also streaming this live on our Facebook page. If you want to make a comment down in the comment section or ask a question, I'll read those questions to Dr. Schaffner. But as we set things up, how bad is this year?
It's a bad year. There isn't any doubt. You know, it started a little bit early, and then it bloomed all over the country. And the reason it did that, which is unusual, because flu usually starts in one part of the country and then over a period of weeks spreads to the rest. But what happened this year, because it started early, it caught the holidays. And people traveling all over, all those hugs and kisses at Christmas, all those parties at New Year's, and the flu virus just spread among us. And so it went all over, some places more than others. And then on top of all that, this year's most prominent, dominant virus is one we call scientifically H3N2, but the only thing you need to know about that is that it's on the severe end of the spectrum. So we're having a nasty flu season.
That's what I hear, that this is more nasty than normal, and it's a more nasty strain than normal.
Right.
And so then the question people always ask, was this strain included in the flu vaccine?
Yes.
So it was in there?
Yes, but a couple of things about the influenza vaccine. The first is, let's just all recognize that it's a pretty good vaccine, but not a perfect vaccine. It's the best science can provide us at the present time. It will prevent an awful lot of flu. Some flu it won't prevent, but even if you get flu in spite of the vaccine, you're much less likely to have a severe case. You're more likely to avoid some of those complications, such as pneumonia, hospitalization, and dying. And then to make this a little even more uncomfortable, the H3N2 strain, that usually doesn't work as well as we would like in the vaccine. So the vaccine is the best we have. I like to paraphrase that old French philosopher Voltaire, who reminded us if we expect perfection and wait for it, we'll avoid doing good with what we have today. So we can still do a lot of good with our pretty good influenza vaccine.
So the vaccine, if you got it, you might get a less severe case of the flu this year.
Right.
You may still get the flu, but it would be a less severe case.
Less severe case.
And what are you seeing at Vanderbilt? So we're seeing all over the country, we're seeing reports about children dying. And that seems more severe than I've seen in a while. We often get reports of elderly people dying, but this year the reports of children, and let's start nationwide first, the reports of children, it's really disturbing what we're seeing.
Well, as I said, this is a more severe case, epidemic due to a more severe viral strain, so it's making more people sick. H3N2 likes to hit older people and put them in the hospital with pneumonia, but it's an equal age attacker. The baby boomers are being hit, and young children also. And when that happens, flu has the capacity to make you really sick, and it can cause you to die, I'm afraid. It can make you literally gravely ill. So we're seeing these reports now, lots of hospitalizations of older people, and occasionally children dying also.
When people die from the flu, is it usually something else that was caused by the flu, like pneumonia, or is it actually the flu? Generally speaking, what is so deadly?
So tighten your seatbelt. We'll have a little bit of biology 101 discussion. The first is that the flu itself is a virus that comes in, gets down into your bronchial tubes, can cause a lot of inflammation, and that, just as you say, Ben, can predispose you to pneumonia. And that's a very, very common complication. But these young people dying of influenza, there's a paradox. young people have such a strong immune response, it can be too strong, and it's actually our own immune response that can make us very, very sick. So there are two ways it can go. What you'd like is an immune response somewhere in the middle that fights the virus but doesn't make us very sick.
That's fascinating. So that's what is impacting so many young people this year.
Yes.
I saw a report on CBS, I think CBS this morning. They said Grady Hospital in Atlanta had opened up tents outside. They were getting so many people.
Right.
Are we seeing here in Nashville those kind of numbers coming in? And boy, how excuse me, concerned are you that we're seeing that in Atlanta?
Well, it's all around us, and of course we're affected also. I think it's true that the hospitals, our emergency departments, the minute clinics, we're all stretched, but we're not quite stretched as badly as Emory is in Atlanta. We're managing, but we're stretched, and we're doing all right. We're managing, but...
Now, it seems to me, and here's the more, I guess, critical thinking side. Every year we see these stories about this is one of the worst flu years ever, I feel like. I mean, are there this is truly one of the worst. And last year when we were seeing these stories, I guess it wasn't as bad last year as it was this year. I guess my question is it just bad every year? Should we just count on it being bad every year? Or are there some years where it's really just not that bad?
By and large, we should expect flu to come in and damage us every year, sometimes less, sometimes much more, and we're on the severe end of the spectrum. It's super rare that we have such a low flu season that we can all yawn, and that's the way it was about 3 years ago, but that's the lowest on record. But by and large, flu comes in, and if we look at hospitalizations across the country, anywhere from 200,000 to 400,000 hospitalizations. And when you talk about deaths, in the milder years, deaths, 4,000, 5,000.
Wow.
That's mild.
Wow.
Up to 40,000. We're going to be up in that very high range, I'm afraid.
40,000.
Excess deaths, people who would not otherwise have died except that they got influenza. Influenza
is terrible.
We call it the flu, and we kind of give it the brush, but familiarity should not breed indifference.
Right.
Influenza is serious, and every infectious disease doctor doesn't like influenza. That's a serious infection.
Wow. All right, so what should people do now? Do you still get the flu vaccine, or what should people do at this point?
Well, let's start with the fact that if flu is so important and can cause such serious disease, we ought to do everything we can to try to prevent it, right? So we all ought to get the influenza vaccine. Now, it's very late to get it this year, right? But if you haven't had it, run, do not walk. Get your influenza vaccine, and then make a belated New Year's resolution. We should all, come September, October, be first in line for influenza next season and bring the whole family with you. So that's important. Avoid people who are coughing and sneezing, and do a lot of good hand hygiene, soap and water, as well as those wipes. And should you get sick, stay home. Don't spread it to everybody at work or at the religious services or at the gym. Stay home for a while. And particularly if you're in those groups where you're more likely to get the complications. Older persons, if you have underlying heart disease or lung disease or diabetes, very young child, call a pregnant woman. Call your healthcare provider, because they can prescribe an antiviral such as Tamiflu.
Okay.
And that can make the illness a little shorter and make it less likely that you'll get one of these nasty complications.
Interesting. All right, let's go to Jeff. Hello, Jeff.
Yes.
Go right ahead.
I have a question. Is it true that a good percentage of the people that have died from the flu have received a flu vaccination? And is it possible the flu shot, or just say H1N1, causes possible complications in other strains?
So, Jeff, there are always some people who die who've received the influenza vaccine. Of course, it's not perfect, and there are many people who have such underlying illnesses that if they get influenza, influenza is going to knock them over. We won't have those data until the end of the season, but influenza vaccine will not make your flu worse. So you don't have to worry about that.
And I think his question also goes to, will it make you sick? And could some of these people be getting the flu because they got the flu vaccine?
You cannot, under any circumstances, get flu from the flu vaccine. We give the influenza vaccine around the world in the millions of doses each year. It's a safe vaccine. You cannot get flu from the flu vaccine.
All right, so that's important to know. And then, all right, we're going to take a break now. I want to, when we come back, talk more about the vaccine. How do they determine which strains are included? Because that always is the big debate. Was it included in the strain?
Right.
You know, in the vaccine this year, was this strain or that strain? And you've already said it was. The strain that's out there this year was included. It's just such a nasty strain that people are still getting sick. All right, we'll take a break. We'll be back right after this.